Hello to the comfort of wisdom and all that imagine itself as a friend to the foe. I cannot believe the culmination of everything that has brought up the pivotal point of this communication and conversation. Puppets. We have begun into the destined timeline that we all must face. No, we are not talking about political candidates or hierarchical leaders and members. We continue with the fact that impersonation be key, voice acting carry through time, and that, a good storyteller can manage to make anything their prerogative. So, what we have aspected for the puppetry, members of the jury, and those who would continue the story among the teller is of the astrology book. Our Gemini has landed with a 9-degree Mars. Associates of this tempted affiliation to resemble the fact that those who wish to forego amplification to allow for the stepping in of the spotlight, because as the doll world works, we can sit in idle and filibuster the house down to the point is you lose operative of the key idol that you wish the conversation to be in. You wish that it paused to let you come up with a good excuse or continuation for you to remain relevant. Dolls, we know how much you cherish the ability. It can't be had. So, with this spread, I'm amidst the key factors that, no, I don't want to talk about this. We're so nosy. I can't believe it. All right. So, how I have my cards laid out is a restructuring of the staircase that I made in a private reading of mine that needed to come forward. Apparently, we have the conversation aspected to the way the astrology chart laid itself out. The subconscious is still handling this thing. There are wishes that provided forth opportunities that the general consciousness and consensus is missing out on that we want to continue to push forward. The doll has decided to remain silent and wish to not be played with and operated against its will. Ace of Swords coming through, relating to the fact there was important information that was seen in the consciousness. Oh, that was the Ace of Wands. This information, you're already acting on it? I thought we made a deal. Four of Swords. The puppets chose to stop talking for a second. Let the dolls talk. Have the conversation for themselves. I think there are desires of what we wish in aspects to what is like uh, the associate for Commonwealth here, the story that has been robbed of its own ending and ability to like be a memory for us to have. But there's so many people who like feel as though they're out of control of the obstacles that have been placed and made available to other people who just make their story irrelevant. It can't be like so associated with the fact that like we're Mars Gemini right now. Like the earth is softened up not by emotion but by the relinquishing of the rigid nature and allowing us to have the thoughts and retain our sanity. This is about puppetry. Like, you're forcing. I don't think so. The Seven of Swords in reverse. People are getting away with stuff that they think no one's paying attention to. The King of Swords riding the tide. The title of the story is, you know, we cannot continue to be fooled into like total isolation from spirit and partake in the fact that like our emotions and shadow are the like contributors in the physical realm. Like the shadow is the memory that your body has experienced and like contains a desire to remember that time again. Sorry, there are some words that I don't want to use just because they're trigger happy. So the puppets want to know how available like you're making yourself to them. And what I mean by that is, again, there's this fear in the unknown examples that the outsiders know are relevant pertaining to entertainment, joy, and relevant upkeep to the fulfillment of the timeline. Ace of Wands, people are acting like the stimulus that occurs even in small movements you cannot like operate without people of this spiritual class recognizing your behavior. They're the ones who like puppetry understands manipulation and the force of the body. And you know, of course, like you see people who have gained the experience in the past to allow them to make movements in the dark because people have consented to the action, and as long as nobody's sharing that familiar information with anybody, they're fine. The Three of Pentacles works against you because spirit is an associate to the fact that people can remain observant and find it within their own subconscious because of the way that you bring these feelings out when you're around them. It's insane. I think it's because you're so eager to spread this wand that the page has made available Sagittarius is representative of the 9 that Mars is currently in. So this message is just relating to the fact that there's this spotlight that you continue to manifest a word in. Even when you're silent, people's subconscious shadow can sense like what's familiar to them already and know that you are a participant in the activity. So it's like, of course, the 7 of Swords, people running away, like the 10 of Swords, we've got to put it to rest. Like, put it to rest. I think it's important to talk about the 7 of Swords because, like, you know, there's agreement that's made upon, like, people's shadow understanding the truth about who you're revealing to, like, the conscious mind. And, like, the puppets are embarrassed for themselves. Just because it's like people are so eager to jump into these new positions that their subconscious is being left behind and left in previous lifetimes that you were a part of here. And subconscious may even learn to resent you for the decisions you made. This is about Mars and its ability to be an associate to one of its inner planet sisters, Earth. If Earth betrays Mars as an entity and something ends up happening to it that it didn't want, I don't know, listen to your heart, dude. The shadow likes to tempt itself into its own reasoning. 10 of Swords. So, I'm glad that we were able to retain the fact that we chose to remain like participants of the conversation and be relevant to the timeline that proceedeth forth for the continuation of knowledge that has been established. In all due course, like, this is a justice, a swift motion for the Queen of Wands, like, and the correlation to fermenting themselves to retain the information that they wish that they choose to feel for themselves in the heart, not of the mind. Temperance in reverse. We're connecting with our lower subconscious right now, and the mind likes to operate as the detailed interpreter of what those feelings are. Just in general, that's how the mind works. I'm sorry. The mind, like, is supposed to receive connection from the body and interpret what has to be accomplished from then and what needs to be released, unreleased, aspects of, like, actions that need to be done for yourself and maintain relevance. Which is frustrating for the mind to hear because it's kind of being put on the spot as a manipulator. But we're talking about puppets. This is the puppet video. First chapter. Sorry, not chapter. Episode. Forget the fact that puppets have no mind of their own and are controlled with the ability that we have. They're relevant in this conversation as well. They're in attendance. They will hear everything involved with their destiny that they're going to be destined for, because they are their actions are relevant by outside influence. You know, they're only relevant because of the motion that we provide it. Unless it's a doll. Episode 1, like, talking about the difference between dolls and puppetry. The doll is an aspect of the community that the mind can connect to. It's like an internet router. Like, there's no operation that's assigned to it, though. Like, it won't be manipulated physically, but it can alter your perceptions of, like, presence, like the present moment, just because of its presence. Like, because it's in the room, I see specific things. People may have, like, my subconscious may have planned a memory to resurface when I interact with this doll, either physically with touch or mentally or visually. And people can, like, trade in the subconscious that way. It's more difficult because you need to have people who know, like, that you own the doll, have experience with it, like, make a promise to respect the doll the way that you cherish it. Like, it's kind of like idol worship, but there's no, like, deity here, at least, like, that talks about. I mean, I guess, like, the king of gnomes is kind of like a deity for puppetry and doll. The gnome doesn't agree. The gnome likes to work with puppets, but the doll... He's like... The way it looked whenever he's spoke to me was just the fact where it was like the doll went to him for help. Does that make sense? Like, the doll's having its own experience that it doesn't want. Consider the fact that, like, the like, designer, creator, worker for the doll to bring it into existence doesn't like the affiliation that people have associated themselves with the design, like, with the creation itself, with the object. And they say, I don't want anything to do with what's going on here. Now, the earth, in the subconscious that it has to remember the fact that, you know, like, the subconscious of, like, matter and material refuses almost to, like, create tethers with souls that, for real, like, want the ability to move on and, like, what I mean by that is, it's like, there are some dolls that don't revolve around the decisions of, like, the people who have them. And they're stuck in this moment, like, with the Ten of Swords coming through. um, they're not at peace. Like the subconscious, there may be people who know of the manufacturer and say this family should like have more sense of gratitude for the fact that they have this item for their child or as a collector. And then like the doll doesn't have like a similar attachment in relationship to the person who owns it. It might not even know the fact that like it has somebody that lives in the room that they're in. I mean, like, it doesn't have an individual personality, but the fact that we are so consumed with identity that we kind of give objects a memory that that we consider for other people to hold relevance in. I'm going in like a deep dive. I'm sorry. So that's like the thing with dolls. Puppets, very self-explanatory until you get into like technology and the like insertion of behavior that isn't controlled and operated by a person. Just because like the consciousness of like the essential toy or being that you're holding has a closer affiliation to you just because of the fact that you are like manipulating it, and then like it recognizes like the fact that there are people who are like stimulating the environment because of the memory that our souls make with the entity itself. Talking about the doll's name, the personality it has, like the ability for people to kind of like write a fiction with themselves and the character. Like, not like an imaginary friend, but like imagining a scenario where like they have an interaction together. So like with puppets, it's far more confusing to understand like as a consciousness, like as far as where the earth is involved. Yeah. Just because like there needs to be a recording for the soul to be able to remember like what influenced all of the hearts that were changed by the interaction that the ventriloquist had with their puppet. And like, I'm not saying like the puppet gets all the credit, but like the soul needs to know like and assign itself a receipt to be able to know when spirit is being used in tandem with this creation. Understand? Um yeah. So there's been lots of running around. I don't think we'll have to worry about that anymore. In spirit, not here. We don't have a lot of like outcomes where people like bring puppets out in public and like make interactions with those people that are around them. Yeah. It's weird. Um it's not a socially normal thing. There's like a stigma against it. Um and we can talk about the reasons for that. Just with the relevant aspect of the fact that we've all decided that these things are typically meant for performance or for like um housing. Like I go to someone's house, I can anticipate the fact that I may find like a aspect of like the person's like childhood, or the fact that like they have a hobby with a collector like addition to an item. Like say they're really into Pokemon, they like plushies, they like you're not likely to run into a puppet um unless like these places have like been socially reserved to being in like therapy and like being able to um have conversations with like a different mind that looks different, but like it's you revealing your subconscious through it. Like it's very weird. Puppets don't really like it all the time because it's like you think of them as an extension of yourself when you're talking about like a persona that's being created in spirit that is associated and attains its own name. Like depending on how much energy is surrounded by that aspected soul. Now I think temperance like be relevant in the case that like your mind is not the consciousness that is being controlled. Like your mind isn't connected with nerves to wow. This is a tough conversation. Like okay. We could talk about that another time. Um but like cuz then we get into like organ donating, like donating organs and like dealing with the conflicting consciousness that like you're sharing with the person and organic material that you're housing now. Usually like there's not a disagreement in like like say if somebody commits a crime who had recently received a donation, like the person who donated the organ doesn't get like something put on their record because somebody with a different consciousness carried out the action. Like you're not dealing with that in this world. Like we're not um uh finding out like the fact that like there may be subconscious feelings that like depending on how attached the original person wants to be, you know, because there are steps taking place like in society and consciousness that would prohibit like a relationship being formed by the recipient who wants to get like familiar with the person. Like there are more laws to prevent that like from harassment than the other way around. Just because like you have a new tissue that is in your body that isn't suckled to the previous anymore, but like there are probably some cycles that you'll have to live through where you where that tissue wants to associate itself with the previous state. Not like you're gonna have dreams, visions, or like bodily urges, but it's like your tissue and the memory that it has, it's gonna have to retrain itself to understand that there's a a stark change between the personality of the new owner as opposed to the previous. Its function remains the same. This is Capricorn energy, like, that we're experiencing here. Like, its ability hasn't been changed. Like, the general function of the new organ, or the new organ's position, like, no, it's not a new organ. It's because it didn't grow in the person that it's now a part of. It's not a new organ. It's man, what am I thinking of? Its responsibility that it has like learned to achieve and accomplish in like history with the previous owner, because we are a familiar entity to each other. Like, we all have the same bodily functions, even though like the responses are different. Like, the function of the organ remains the same. You'll find it unless there is a disagreement or incongruence with just a genetic effect or disability that a person attains. So I just think the desire to associate the behavioral changes, because like we're not dealing with a aspect of function that is likely to change based on where it's been placed. As long as it has the necessary things to keep it afloat and functional, it's going to carry out those same duties it did previously. The consciousness is just going to know and remember the fact that it's in a new place. Whether because it recognizes that there are different tempers in the people and hobbies and activities that they do. Like, yeah, we have to imagine the fact that the subconscious tissue makes associations with where it grew, in the same way that the microbiome in the stomach alters and grows according to the habits and habitual eating of the person who is feeding the stomach. So the subconscious operates in the same way. We have new associations with each other just because of that exchange that we've learned to make. Blood is not an example of this. just because blood tends to be more familiar than tissue. I don't have as much experience in that aspect of the world, but as far as I know, there are different types of blood that doesn't alter the DNA. I think blood, like, um, I'll do that for a future episode, probably. I think that is subconscious too, like, because it just recognizes the level of stress that you experience in relation to where it came. Like, if you get a blood transfusion, the pressure that it experiences, depending on how important it is, like, when we all go back to the singularity, like, probably one of the first orders of business is going to be, like, who experienced the most stress. Like, whose blood was literally, like, because the conscious matter is going to remember those aspects about itself, and the mind gets to, well, that is as if to say we are the most important things in this room. So I don't think that we're going to, like, be forced to go through a timeline where we continue to talk about the anxieties that was assessed and faced. But, like, when the trial comes, like, the Queen of Wands will put a halt to, like, the process and fulfillment of a judicious storytelling to associate itself with the fact that, like, because this specific memory is occurring, there's a moment in the conscious memory of matter that is providing the testimony of a an associated stress as a causal effect of the, like, you know, like, behavior changes in a person. So, like, Spirit's gonna have to work that out, of course, when we go back to the singularity, if we go to the singularity. And that's gonna be a long time. So I think, like, people's personal shadows, like, aren't gonna be what contributes to the testimony. Like, when it comes to the judgment day that matter comes to, like the singularity, the moon, like, just because, like, the singularity is where matter gets to have its own conversation with itself and achieve, like, an organization of its memorable moments that the atmosphere of spirit altered, like, the story. The comprehension of this, like, demands that you remove the idea that in the singularity, matter experiences things in a linear fashion. There are time skips. Sometimes, like, you go back to a specific problem because, and this is me associating the fact that, like, our society specifically is not like the most important aspect of the material world that we experience, but because of the position that we've put ourselves in, we've gotten to the point where our consciousness and our story has altered the landscape of Earth and with the other beings that exist here, as well as the minerals that have experienced the consistent pressure of the Earth, have been dug up and moved around. So those are going to be timelines that like have to be considered because of like just the memory of the specific geode and like how did it influence and have impact on the world at large, who was in control of the change in landscape. Yeah. But we're talking about puppets. Who's being manipulated? It was The Rock. Yeah, the relationship between the mind and matter constantly at odds until we attain like like technology relevant enough to gain access to those quantum experiences where the soul, this is like, yes, we're gonna have to get into this, into the deep aspects of the puppet franchise and the affiliation it has in astrology, just because of the series will be pertaining to relevant like materials that like, again, we're talking about things that don't necessarily have a mind of their own and are kind of created. Oh, this is gonna be such an exciting series. Yes. I don't know if we have any puppet deities yet. I don't know. Miss Piggy would be cool if she was. But like, I don't understand like, yeah, how to correlate the difference between like puppets that mirror the familiar language of like the kingdoms that we have come from, as far as like who's lived here on this planet and like um who's lived here on this planet, and it's just inevitable that we're gonna have a character made to resemble like that aspect of our cultural environment. But like Miss Piggy, like for some reason my consciousness is like, yeah, I don't think so. Sometimes it's like for a puppet deity to be made like into existence, like it's like the identity, like the ability of this, like the name, the characterization, the personality of the deity itself is a thing that had formation in spirit alone. Without the influence, it was not built. Like it's a formation of the imagination that wandered into a realm where matter existed. and then entered like contract with the people that were like gonna be born here. And like, in order for this to be a deity, like this this like this soul has to like I just think it's weird when to consider the fact that this deity that's part of the puppet realm would incarnate like as a person of the society and create itself. Um it just seems like an inside job kind of thing. It's kind of lazy. I'm more fascinated with the fact that like I'm more fascinated with like something of the imagination that like was kind of like asked to be here and written into existence. Like symptoms of this are just like people who in the spirit like existence before they came here had relationships with this being prior to coming here, and they were just the first who were innovative enough to consciously remember aspects of this character and make their own account of like it to remember it well enough and create it, and find success in the process. Like, sure, you can say your puppet's a deity, but like we're considering the fact that like the success rate of like deity work is like gaining notoriety amongst the consensus of the population that it's a part of now. If it cannot achieve that, then it becomes something of the